Let me tell you something. I've worked the outer rigs for almost 11 years now. 11 years of bad coffee, worse sleep, and the kind of silence that gets into your bones. You think you've seen everything out there. You haven't. I promise you, you haven't. Because nothing prepared me for what I pulled out of that water. But let me start at the beginning, or close to it. Because if I just jump to the part where I'm holding a half-drowned alien predator the size of a horse, you won't understand why my hands wouldn't stop shaking. And you won't understand why, even now, 3 years later, I still wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about what was hidden behind that creature's eyes. So bear with me, I'll go slow. My name is Dren Halloway. People back on the colony called me Hal. I worked maintenance and salvage on a place called Tideline Station, though station makes it sound grander than it was. It was a half-sunk research platform anchored over a moon we just called Echo. Officially, it had a long catalog number nobody used. Everybody called it Echo because if you shouted off the platform railing at night, the sound came back to you across the water. Twice, sometimes. The whole moon was ocean. Black, deep, endless ocean, with a sky the color of a fresh bruise. There were maybe 40 of us living there. Engineers, a couple of biologists, 2 pilots, a med tech named Saul who could fix anything that bled and nothing that didn't. And the machines, of course. The machines were everywhere. You have to understand, this wasn't a clean, shiny future like in the old movies. Echo was a frontier dump. Half our drones were older than I was, patched together with whatever we could print or scavenge. The big harvester rigs out on the water ran on hydraulic systems that screamed like dying animals every time they bent. We had loader frames, these tall, hunched walker machines we called mules, that you'd strap into and pilot like a second body. They smelled like hot oil and old sweat. Every one of them had a name scratched into the cockpit by whoever had died or quit before you. Mine was called Patience. Somebody before me had a sense of humor. The weather on Echo was a liar. It could be flat calm 1 minute, water like black glass, and then a storm front would come howling out of nowhere and turn the whole sea into a fist. We had warnings, sure. Old atmospheric drones that pinged the platform when pressure dropped. But they were slow, and half the time they were wrong, and you learned to trust your gut more than the readout. That morning my gut was quiet. That's the thing I remember most. It was a calm morning. No reason for anything to go wrong. I was out on the Eastern Harvest Line alone. That wasn't unusual. We ran skeleton shifts to save power, and most of the salvage work was solo anyway. You'd take a mule out across the catwalk bridges that connected the floating harvest nodes, do your repairs, log your hours, and come back before the dark really settled in. I had Patience strapped on, the cockpit humming around me, the legs hissing as I walked her out across the long metal causeway. Below me, the water moved slow and oily. Up above, the sky was that bruised purple, and the 2 little moons that Echo had of its own sat low on the horizon like a pair of eyes that hadn't decided whether to open yet. It was quiet. Just the creak of the walkway, the rhythm of the mule's footsteps, and my own breathing fogging up the inside of the visor. And then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A wet, choking, thrashing sound coming from somewhere off the edge of the node. At first I thought it was a busted intake valve. Those things gurgle when they flood. I stopped Patience, killed the leg motors, and just listened. It came again, and this time I knew it wasn't a machine. It was something alive, something drowning. Now I want to be honest with you here, because I promised I'd tell this straight. My first instinct was not to be a hero. My first instinct was to leave. Echo's ocean had things in it. We didn't have a full catalog, the biologists were always complaining about that, but we knew there were big things down deep. Things that bumped the platform pylons at night. Things that left bite marks the size of dinner plates on the harvest nodes. The rule, the unspoken rule everybody on Tideline lived by, was simple. You don't go in the water, ever, not for any reason. The water was theirs. The platform was ours. You kept the line. So when I heard that thrashing, the smart move, the safe move, The move that everybody back on the platform would have nodded at was to log it, report it, and walk patients right back the way I came. I almost did. But then I leaned the mule over the railing and looked down, and I saw it. There was a gap between two harvest nodes, a kind of channel, maybe 4 meters across, where the water funneled through and got rough. And caught in that channel, tangled in a snarl of old mooring cable and drift netting, was an animal. I'd never seen anything like it. Not in the field, not in the colony's databanks, not anywhere. It was big, long-bodied, low to the water, with limbs that ended in wide-webbed paws. Its fur, and it did have fur, slick and dark, plastered down by the water, was patterned. Spots. Rosettes, actually, like the leopards back in the old Earth archives the kids watched in school. But these spots glowed. Faint, soft, a sort of cold blue-green light pulsing slow under the surface of its coat, like there was something burning low inside it. A leopard. That's the only word my brain reached for. A leopard in the water on a moon that should never have had a single warm-blooded thing on it. And it was drowning. The cable had it around the body and one of the back legs. Every time it surged up to breathe, the netting dragged it back under. I watched it break the surface, gasp this awful, ragged, human-sounding gasp, and go down again. Its eyes were rolling, wide, panicked. And here's the thing I'll never forget. When it came up that one time, it looked at me, right at the cockpit of the mule, like it knew there was a person in there. It didn't snarl, it didn't thrash at me. It just looked, and in that look there was something I recognized, something I'd felt myself more than once on bad nights out on the water. It was afraid to die alone. That look did it. The rule, the safe move, all of it gone. I was already reaching for the harness release before I'd decided anything. You'd think a guy who'd spent 11 years out there would have a plan. I didn't. I had a mule, a fear of the water, and about 30 seconds before that animal went under for good. I couldn't go in myself. I want to be clear about that so you don't think I'm braver than I am. I'm not a strong swimmer, and Echo's water was cold enough to stop your heart in under a minute. If I jumped in, you'd be hearing this story from somebody else, if at all. So I used patience. The mule's arms weren't built for delicate work. They were salvage arms, heavy hydraulic claws meant to bend metal and haul cable. But I'd been piloting that frame for 3 years. It was almost a part of me by then. I knew exactly how much pressure those claws could put out before they crushed. I leaned her out over the channel, locked the back legs against the railing, and lowered the right arm down into that black water. Slow. So slow. The animal was thrashing right under the claw, and one wrong move would have pinned it, broken it, killed the thing I was trying to save. The water was so dark I couldn't see the cable anymore. I had to do it by feel, by the tremor coming up through the mule's frame whenever the claw brushed against something. I'd feel a snag, ease the claw open, hook it, pull just a little, test it, the whole frame groaning. And the animal, the leopard, it stopped fighting me. I don't know how it knew, but the second the claw came near it, it went still. Didn't thrash, didn't snap. It hung there in the cable, breathing in those terrible ragged gasps whenever it could, and it let me work. That's not normal. I've handled scared animals before back on the colony farms. Scared animals fight everything, especially the thing that's trying to help. They can't tell the difference, but this one could. This one understood. It took me 4 minutes. 4 minutes that felt like 4 hours. My arms were aching just from the tension of holding the controls steady. Sweat was running into my eyes inside the visor, and I couldn't wipe it. I kept whispering to it, to the animal, to the mule, to myself. I don't even know, almost, hold on, almost. Then the last loop of cable came free. And the thing that happened next, I still can't fully explain. The leopard didn't bolt. It didn't dive away into the dark like any sane wild animal would. It surged up out of the water, hooked its front paws over the lip of the harvest node, and dragged itself up onto the metal deck, heaving, coughing up seawater. And then it collapsed there, half on the deck and half hanging over the edge, and it just lay there, looking at me. Right then the warning chime went off in the cockpit. Pressure was dropping. A storm front was coming in fast off the eastern dark. And I had a choice to make. I should have left it there, logged it, reported a live unknown specimen on Node 7, and walked patients home before the storm hit. That's protocol. That's what a sane man does. But you've already figured out by now that I didn't. The storm was coming. The Leopard was exhausted. It couldn't have made it back to deep water before the swells came up, and even if it had, it was hurt. I could see now in the failing light that the cable had torn it up bad. There was blood, dark and almost black, leaking from the gash on its back leg. The glow under its fur was dimming, flickering, like a power cell running down. And it was still looking at me. So I did the stupidest, most dangerous thing I've ever done. I powered Patience down to her lowest setting, popped the cockpit, and climbed out onto the node. I want you to picture this. Pitch dark coming on, a storm closing in, 40 meters from the nearest catwalk back to the platform, and a man, alone, walking toward a wounded alien predator big enough to take his arm off in one bite. My legs did not want to move. I'm not going to pretend they did. But I walked toward it anyway, slow, hands out, talking the whole time in this low, steady voice the way you'd talk to a spooked horse. Easy. Easy now. I'm not going to hurt you. You're okay. You're okay. It watched me come. Its sides were heaving. Up close it was even bigger than I'd thought, longer than I was tall, and that was just the body, not counting the thick, tapering tail. Its eyes were the color of warm amber with a black slit pupil that widened as I got near. There were whiskers, long and silver, beaded with seawater, and those rosettes, glowing soft, pulsing in time with its breathing. I got close enough to touch it. And I stopped. Because that close I could see something I hadn't seen before. Around its neck, almost hidden in the wet fur, there was a band. Not a natural thing. A band of dark metal fitted close, with a single point of light on it, a tiny, steady amber dot, like a status light on a machine. It was wearing something made, which meant it wasn't just an animal, which meant somebody had put that band on it, and somebody somewhere knew it was here. I didn't have time to think about what that meant, because the storm hit. When a storm comes in off Echo's dark, it doesn't build. It arrives. 1 second the air was just heavy and still, and the next the wind slammed into the node hard enough to stagger me, and the rain came sideways, cold as knives, and the swells started coming up over the deck in sheets of black water. I made a decision in about half a second. The kind of decision you don't really decide, it just happens, and you find out afterward what kind of person you are by what your body chose. I couldn't leave it, and I couldn't get it back to the platform on foot. The catwalk was already disappearing under the swells. But the mule had a cargo cradle, a flat reinforced platform on the back meant for hauling salvage. It wasn't built for a living passenger. It was barely big enough, but it was all I had. I climbed back into Patience, fired her up, and lowered the cradle to deck level beside the Leopard. And then, this is the part that nobody back on the platform believed when I told them. This is the part I barely believed myself. I opened the cradle and I patted it and I said, "Come on, get up. We're getting out of here." And it understood me. It dragged itself up. Slow, weak, in obvious pain, but it crawled off the deck and onto the cradle and settled there, and it looked back at me through the rain like it was saying go. So I went. I have piloted Patience through some bad situations. Nothing like that. The walk back across the causeway should have taken 6 minutes. It took 20. Every step, the wind tried to take the mule's legs out from under us. Swells came over the catwalk and submerged us to the cockpit, and I'd be piloting blind through black water for 3-4 seconds at a time, just trusting that the next step would find metal and not empty air. The frame screamed. Warning lights painted the whole cockpit red. I had one eye on the path and one eye on the rear feed, on that dark shape huddled in the cradle, getting battered by the storm. the glow under its fur getting fainter and fainter. Twice I thought I'd lost it. Twice a swell came over, and when it cleared I couldn't see the leopard and my heart just stopped. And then the water would drain and there it'd be, still hanging on, claws dug into the cradle grating, refusing to be washed away. I started talking to it again, yelling really over the storm. "Don't you let go, you hear me? You did not survive that water just to fall off my damn truck. Hold on." I don't know if it understood the words, but it held on. We made the platform with the storm at our backs and the eastern dark swallowing the node we just left. I walked Patience up the loading ramp, into the cavernous dim of the main hangar, and the second we were under cover and out of the wind, I killed the legs, and for a long moment I just sat there in the cockpit, soaked through, shaking, listening to the storm hammer the hangar doors behind us. And from the cradle, in the sudden quiet, I heard the Leopard make a sound. A low, rough, rumbling sound. It was purring. Saul was the first one to find us. Saul was our med-tech, like I said. Small, sharp, gray hair cut close, hands that never stopped moving. Saul had seen me come back from a lot of bad nights, but the look on that face when the hangar lights came up and there was a glowing alien leopard lying in the cargo cradle of my mule, I'll treasure that look till the day I die. "Hal," Saul said, very slowly, very carefully, not moving a muscle. "What is that?" "I don't know," I said, "but it's hurt and it's not attacking anybody and I need your help." "That is a predator." "Yeah. You brought a wild, alien predator into our hangar." "I did. During a storm." "Saul, please." Saul stared at me, then at the leopard, then back at me. And then, because Saul was, underneath all that sharpness, the best person on that whole platform, Saul set down the kit, took a slow breath and said, "If it eats me, I'm haunting you forever." And we got to work. Word spread fast, the way it does on a small platform. Within the hour, half of Tideline was crowded around the hangar, keeping a careful distance, whispering. The two biologists, Rents and Akabe, pushed to the front, and you could see them practically vibrating, torn between scientific ecstasy and pure terror. "It's impossible," Akabe kept saying. "There's no warm-blooded fauna on Echo. There can't be. The biosphere doesn't support it. This is impossible." "And yet," Rents said, starring. The leopard lay on a tarp Saul and I had spread out, breathing slow. It had let us approach. Let Saul clean and seal the gash on its leg, though it flinched and growled low when the cleaner stung. It watched everything with those amber eyes, calm now, exhausted but aware, tracking every person in the room. And I noticed I was the only one it relaxed around. When I came close, the tension went out of it. When anybody else got near, the muscles bunched just slightly. It had decided I was safe. The rest of them, it hadn't decided yet. It was Rents who first noticed the collar. "Hal," his voice changed, went quiet and tight. "Hal, come look at this." I crouched down next to him. He pointed, careful not to actually touch, at the band of dark metal around the leopard's neck. Up close in the bright hangar light I could see it clearly for the first time. It wasn't crude. It wasn't a tracking tag like we'd put on colony livestock. The metal was seamless, no rivets, no clasp I could see. The surface had patterns etched into it, fine, deliberate, almost like writing, but nothing in any alphabet I'd ever seen. And that single amber light, steady, patient. "That's not ours," Rents said. "No. That's not Coalition. That's not any human design. I've never seen that metal work." He sat back on his heels. His face had gone pale. "Hal, do you understand what this means? This animal is collared. Somebody made that. Somebody intelligent with technology, and that somebody is not us. And they were here, on Echo, close enough to do this." The hangar went very quiet. Because Echo was supposed to be empty. That was the whole point of it. An empty ocean moon, unclaimed, no native intelligence, free for the taking. That's why the Coalition let a ragtag salvage crew like a squat on it. There was nothing here worth fighting over. Except now there was a glowing leopard with alien tech around its neck, lying on my hangar floor. And the math on that was very simple and very bad. We weren't alone on Echo. We never had been. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I went back down to the hangar around 2 a.m. just to check on it. Saul was already there, of course Saul was. Saul never trusted anybody else to watch a patient. The Leopard was sleeping, its sides rising and falling slow, the glow under its fur pulsing soft and steady. Healthier. The rest had done it good. "It's strong," Saul said quietly, not looking up. "Whatever it is. The leg's already knitting faster than it should, faster than a human would. Its blood's doing things I don't have words for." A pause. "It's beautiful, Hal." "Yeah," I said. I sat down against the wall, a little ways from it, the way you sit near a sleeping animal you don't want to wake. And after a while, without opening its eyes, the Leopard's tail twitched, and it shifted, and it stretched one big webbed paw out across the floor until it was just barely touching my boot. And it left it there. I didn't move for an hour. I just sat in the quiet hangar with the storm dying down outside and an alien's paw resting against my foot, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 11 years on that water. I felt like I wasn't alone. We named her Ember. It was Saul's idea on account of the glow, and it was Saul who first started calling her she, though none of us actually knew, and somehow it just stuck and felt right. By the second day, Ember was up and moving, limping a little but moving. By the third day, she'd claimed a corner of the hangar near patients as her own, and she would not let anybody move the mule. If somebody so much as climbed into Patience's cockpit, Ember would go tense and start that low warning rumble. Rents had a theory that she associated the mule with me, with rescue, with safety, and didn't want it taken away. I think it was simpler than that. I think she just liked being near the thing that saved her. She followed me, everywhere. By day 4, I had a glowing alien leopard padding along behind me through the corridors of Tideline Station like an enormous, terrifying dog. People got used to her fast, faster than you'd think. She never threatened anyone. She was gentle, almost careful, like she knew how strong she was and was deliberately holding it back. Kids, we had 3 kids on the platform, adored her. She'd let them lie against her side and feel the glow pulse, and she'd make that low purring rumble, and the parents would stand there, white-knuckled, and not say a word because what could you say? But here's the thing. Here's the thing I kept coming back to in the quiet when the wonder wore off. The collar. Ember would let us do anything. Brush her fur, treat her legs, scan her, feed her. She ate the synthetic protein we made for the colony fish farms, ate it like she'd been eating it her whole life, which was its own unsettling detail. She trusted us completely. But she would not let anyone touch the collar. The one time Rents tried, gently, just trying to get a closer scan, she came up off the floor faster than anything that big should be able to move, and she put herself between Rents and the rest of us, and she made a sound none of us had heard before. Not a growl, something deeper. A warning that went straight down your spine and shut off the part of your brain that thinks. We backed off. Of course we backed off. And after, when she'd settled, I sat with her, and I looked at that band of dark metal and that single steady amber light, and I thought, you're not wearing that. You're guarding it. Whatever that collar was, Ember had been given a job, and she was still doing it. The amber light changed on the 6th day. I was the only one who noticed at first. I'd spent more time looking at that collar than anybody. I knew its rhythm, and on the 6th day, the steady amber dot started to blink. Slow, patient, once every few seconds, but blinking now where before it had been solid. I called Rents down. He went pale again. He did that a lot that week, and he scanned it from a distance, and what he found made the whole thing worse. "It's transmitting," he said, "or receiving, or both. There's a signal coming off that thing, Hal. Low power, tight beam pointed straight up." He swallowed. "It started 6 days ago, the day you pulled her out of the water." 6 days, I said. "It activated when she made contact with us, with the platform, with our power systems maybe, or just with people." He rubbed his face. Hal, I think the collar's not just guarding something. I think it's a beacon, and I think pulling her out of that water turned it on. The cold that went through me, then, had nothing to do with Echo's weather. "Who's it calling?" I said. Rents didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both already knew it wasn't us. And it wasn't anybody friendly. Friendly people don't put guardian beasts and tight beam beacons on remote ocean moons and leave them out in the dark, dormant, waiting for somebody to come along and trip the wire. We'd found something on Echo, or rather something had found us. That night I sat with Ember a long time. She rested her big head on my knee, the way she'd started doing, and the collar blinked its slow, patient blink, sending its message up into a sky I couldn't read. And I stroked her fur and watched those rosettes glow, and I said, very quietly, "What did you bring to us, girl? What were you keeping safe down there?" She looked up at me with those warm, amber eyes. And I will swear this to anybody, there was something in them that looked like an apology. Like she was sorry. Like she knew exactly what was coming, and she was sorry she'd let it to us, and there was nothing either of us could do about it now. 3 days after the beacon woke up, the sky over Echo split open. I was out on the eastern line again. We couldn't just stop working. The colony needed the harvest no matter what was orbiting overhead, and I was the first one to see it. A light high up, where the bruised purple of the upper atmosphere thinned out into the black. A new light where there shouldn't have been one. It got brighter and brighter, and then it resolved into a shape. A ship. Not a human ship. I'd been around human ships my whole life, and I knew their lines boxy, ugly, functional, built by committee and held together by duct tape and prayer. This was not that. This was long and smooth and dark, and it moved through the upper air without a sound and without a flicker, the way a shark moves through water. It didn't have running lights. It didn't broadcast a hail. It just came down out of the dark, slow and silent and certain, and it took up a position in high orbit directly above Tideline Station. Directly above us, above the beacon, above Ember. I got Patience back to the platform in record time. By the time I came up the loading ramp, the whole crew was already gathered in the hangar, faces turned up at the ceiling like they could see through it, and the comms board in the corner was lit up red and screaming with a signal we couldn't decode. And Ember was standing in the middle of the floor, every muscle rigid, her glow flared up bright as I'd ever seen it, staring at the ceiling and making that deep, spine-killing sound, but louder now, and it wasn't a warning anymore. It was a challenge. Rents grabbed my arm as I climbed out of the mule. His hand was shaking. "Hal," he said, "Hal, they're not hailing us. They're not asking who we are, they already know. The signal, it's not a question, it's an order." He looked at me, and there was real fear in his eyes, the kind I'd never seen on him before. "They're telling us to stand down and surrender the asset." "The asset," I said. "Ember," he said, "or the collar, or whatever's in it." He swallowed hard. "Hal, they didn't come to talk, they came to collect." Above us, somewhere up in the dark, the silent ship hung over our heads. And down in the hangar, the Leopard I'd pulled out of the water stood her ground and roared at the ceiling, putting herself, once again, between something terrible and the people she'd decided to protect. And that's when I understood the secret she'd been guarding wasn't a thing at all. It was a war. And we just walked into the middle of it. If you're just joining me, here's where we left off. My name's Dren Halloway. 11 years on the outer rigs, mostly on a half-sunk platform called Tideline Station, anchored over an ocean moon we called Echo. I pulled a drowning alien leopard out of the water. We named her Ember on account of the glow under her fur. She had a collar on, alien tech, and when I rescued her, that collar woke up and started sending a signal into the sky. 10 days later, the sky answered. A long, smooth, silent ship, nothing human about it, came down out of the dark and parked itself in orbit directly over our heads. And it sent us one message, over and over, in a code we could barely read. Not a hello, an order. Stand down, surrender the asset. That's where I left you. So let me tell you what happened next. And I'll warn you now, this is the part where my hands start to shake again, just remembering it. The first 6 hours, nothing happened. That was almost the worst part. The ship just hung up there, silent, patient, repeating its order, and we just sat down in the hangar, 40 terrified people and one glowing Leopard, waiting for the universe to do something. We tried to talk to it. Of course we did. Rent spent those 6 hours hunched over the comms board, trying every protocol, every frequency, every handshake in the human catalog. He got nothing back but the same cold, repeating signal. We tried to send our own message. We're civilians. We're a salvage crew. We don't want trouble. We just found an animal, but either they couldn't understand us or they didn't care. I'm pretty sure it was the second one. Akabe, the other biologist, had a different idea. While Rents worked the comms, she sat with Ember, just sat, talking to her, low and gentle, watching her reactions. And around hour 4, Akabe came and found me, and her hands were shaking too. Hal, she said, I think she understands more than we know, a lot more. She glanced back at the Leopard. Watch this. She went back to Ember and crouched down in front of her and said very clearly, Ember, the ship up there. She pointed at the ceiling. Friend or enemy? And Ember looked at the ceiling, and her glow dimmed down low, almost to nothing, the way it did when she was hurt or sad. And she made a sound, soft, mournful, a sound I can only call grief. Then Akabe said, Ember, the collar, what's in the collar? And the Leopard turned and looked at me. Not at Akabe, at me, across the whole hangar. She held my eyes for a long moment, and then she walked over, slow, deliberate, that limp almost gone now, and she lay down in front of me, and she lowered her head, and she pushed the collar toward me. Toward me, the thing she wouldn't let anyone touch. She was offering it. She wants you to take it, Akabe whispered. Hal, she's choosing you. I want to tell you I knew what I was doing. I didn't. I knelt down in front of her. My heart was going so hard I could feel it in my teeth. And I reached out slow, the way I'd reached out that first night, and I touched the collar. It was warm, warmer than her fur. And the second my fingers made contact with that single amber light, the light turned blue, and the collar did something I will spend the rest of my life trying to describe. It opened. Not like a clasp. The metal just unfolded, peeled back along seams I hadn't been able to see, and out of it rose a small projection of light, a hologram, hovering in the air over Ember's neck. Shapes turning in the air. Symbols. And then the symbols resolved, the way Rentz's comms code never could, into something my brain could hold. It was a map. A star map. Our region of space, but seen wrong, seen from an angle no human had ever charted. And scattered across it like seeds were dozens of marked points. And at each marked point, a small image. A small, glowing, spotted image. Leopards. Dozens of them, scattered across dozens of worlds. And there was sound, too, coming from the collar, faint, a voice that wasn't a voice, a sort of layered tone that the back of my skull translated into meaning whether I wanted it to or not. I'm not going to pretend I understood every word. I understood the shape of it, the feeling of it, and the feeling was this. We are the last, we were many. They came and we hid what mattered most, and we scattered the keepers across the dark so that all of it could not be found in one place. Each keeper holds a piece. Find them. Find all of them. Bring them home, or we are gone forever. The hologram turned in the air, and one of the marked points pulsed brighter than the others. One world, and the image at that world wasn't a leopard. It was a world covered in ocean. Black, deep, endless ocean with a sky the color of a bruise. It was Echo. I felt the floor tilt under me. Rents was suddenly at my shoulder, staring at the projection, and his voice came out cracked. Hal, that's us, that's Echo, they marked Echo. He grabbed my arm. She didn't come from somewhere else. The thing she's guarding, it's not in the collar's just the key. The thing she's guarding is here. It's been here the whole time, down in the water. That's why she was in the water, Hal. She wasn't lost. She was on patrol. She was guarding the door. And the silent ship overhead, the one demanding we surrender the asset, it suddenly made a terrible kind of sense. They weren't here to collect a Leopard. They were here to finish a genocide. And they'd been looking for this door, this last hidden vault, for a very long time. And 10 days ago, when I pulled a drowning animal out of the sea, I'd lit a beacon that told them exactly where to find it. I need you to understand the weight of that moment. Everything that was about to happen, every life on that platform, the survival of an entire people I'd never even known existed until 10 days before, all of it came back to one thing. One small, simple, human thing. I'd heard something drowning, and I hadn't walked away. Rents was already running the numbers out loud, panicking. If they want what's down there, they'll take it. We can't fight a warship. We can't even talk to it. They'll burn the platform if they have to. They'll burn the whole moon. 40 of us against. His voice broke. Hal, there are kids on this platform. I know. We have to give them the collar. We have to. Maybe if we hand it over, they take it and they go and they leave us. No, I said. It came out of me flat and certain, and I didn't even decide to say it. It just came. The same way climbing out of the mule had come, that first night, with the storm closing in. Rent stared at me. Hal. Look at her, I said. Ember was lying there with the open collar glowing blue against her fur, and she was looking up at me, and there was that apology in her eyes again, but there was something else now too. Trust. Total, bottomless, terrifying trust. She'd carried this her whole life. She'd guarded the last door of her whole vanished people, alone in the cold, dark water of a moon at the edge of nowhere, for who knows how many years. She'd nearly died doing it. And when she'd had the chance to choose who to hand it to, out of every creature in the universe, she'd chosen the one who'd heard her drowning and come. She'd chosen a salvage worker with bad coffee and worse luck. She'd chosen us. We're not handing her over, I said. And we're not handing over what's down there. I don't care what they are. I don't care what they've got up in orbit. You don't get to murder a whole people and then come collect the last of them like cargo. Not while I'm standing here. It was the bravest thing I've ever said. It was also, probably, the stupidest. And looking back, I think it was the truest thing I've ever said too. The whole hangar was dead silent. And then Saul, small, sharp Saul, stepped up beside me and crossed both arms and said, well, I already told him if it ate me I'd haunt him. Might as well die for the right reasons. A pause. I'm with Hal. Then Akabe. Then the 2 pilots. Then, one by one, the whole crew of Tideline Station, a crew of nobodies on a platform that didn't even have a real name, decided to stand between a vanishing people and the thing that came to erase them. I told you nothing out there prepares you for what you'll find. But that night, watching those people choose, that taught me what humans are. We're the ones who hear something drowning and don't walk away, even when we should, even when it'll cost us everything. Maybe especially then. We didn't have a plan. We had a fishing platform, a beacon we couldn't turn off, and about an hour before the ship overhead ran out of patience. But we had 2 things they didn't count on. We had Ember, and we had the water. Here's what we figured out fast in that last hour. The collar wasn't just a key and a map. When I touched it, it had bonded to me. Akabe's word keyed itself to my contact, the way it must have been keyed to the keeper before Ember. The signal it was sending up to the ship wasn't a surrender beacon. It was a location beacon. As long as it was active and exposed, the ship knew exactly where the door was. The vault. Down in the deep water under the platform. But the collar could be moved. And the signal would follow it. And the ship, for all its silent menace, was built for one thing, to track that signal down to its source and take what was there. It was a hunting ship, a bloodhound, and a bloodhound only knows how to follow the scent it's given. So we give it a different scent, I said. Rents looked at me like I'd lost my mind. What? They're tracking the collar. The collar follows me now, it's keyed to me. So I take the collar, I take patience, and I lead them away from the platform, away from the kids, away from the door, out into the deep water, out east into the dark, and they follow, because that's the only thing they know how to do. I was breathing fast. The plan was building itself as I said it. And out there, away from everybody, we figure out how to put it back to sleep, or destroy it, or I don't know. But we get it away from here first. We move the target. That's a suicide run, Rent said quietly. Maybe. They'll follow you out, and they'll vaporize you the second they have a clear shot. Maybe. Hell. Rents, I said, you got a better idea, because we've got about 40 minutes. He didn't, nobody did. And that's when Ember stood up. She'd been listening, I'm certain of it now, certain she understood every word, and she stood up, and she walked over to Patience, and she looked at the cargo cradle. The same cradle she'd ridden in through the storm, the night I pulled her out of the sea. And she looked back at me, and her meaning could not have been clearer if she'd spoken it out loud. Not alone, we go together, we always go together. I started to argue. I started to say no, you stay here, you stay safe. And she just looked at me, and I understood that this was hers. This was her people, her door, her whole reason for existing. She had not survived all those years in the cold water to sit in a hangar while somebody else made the last stand for her. She'd chosen me to carry the key, but she was going to carry it with me. Okay, I said, my voice didn't sound like mine. Okay, girl, together. I'll keep the goodbye short because it was short. We didn't have time for more. Saul gripped my shoulder hard and didn't say anything, which from Saul meant more than a speech. Ake pressed a data chip into my hand. Everything we recorded, the map, the message, in case anybody ever needs to know what was here. Rents, who couldn't stop shaking, who I'd half expected to fight me to the end, just hugged me fast and fierce and stepped back and said, "Go fast, Hal, don't look back." The kids didn't fully understand. They just knew Ember was leaving. The littlest one, a girl named Pell, ran up and threw her arms around as much of Ember's neck as she could reach, and Ember went very still and very gentle and lowered her head and let her. And then Pell stepped back, and Ember made that soft purring rumble one last time, and that was that. I climbed into Patience. Ember climbed into the cradle, the collar glowing blue around her neck. I sealed the cockpit, fired the legs, and walked us out of the hangar, down the loading ramp, into the dark and the open water. The ship overhead noticed immediately. I watched on the cockpit feed as that long, smooth shape shifted in orbit, tracking us, peeling away from its position over the platform to follow the beacon east, following the scent, just like I'd hoped, just like I'd been afraid of. It's working, I said out loud to Ember, to myself. It's working. They're following. Come on, you ugly beautiful thing, come away from them. Follow me into the dark. And it did. We went out maybe 6 kilometers. Far enough that the platform lights vanished behind us, and there was nothing but black water and the bruise-colored sky, and the cold and the wind, and the silent ship descending out of orbit overhead, lower and lower, coming down to take what it had hunted across the stars. I walked Patience out to the last harvest node on the eastern line, the very edge of our territory, where the catwalks ended and the deep dark began. And I stopped there, because there was nowhere left to run, and I'd never really planned to run, not all the way. I'd planned to get them away from the platform. That part was done. 40 people and 3 kids and a hidden door were safe behind me. Whatever came next was just mine, and Ember's to carry. The ship came down out of the clouds. Up close it was enormous, blotting out half the sky, and silent, always that terrible silence. It hung over the node, and a light reached down from its belly, not a weapon, not yet, a scanning light, sweeping over Patience, over the cradle, over Ember and the glowing collar, confirming the scent, confirming the kill. And then the comms board in my cockpit lit up red, and the order came again. The same one, stand down, surrender the asset. I keyed the open channel. I don't know if they could understand me. I didn't care. I just needed to say it. "My name is Dren Halloway," I said into the dark. "I'm a salvage worker, I'm a nobody, and I pulled this animal out of the water because she was drowning and because where I'm from you don't walk away from something that's drowning. I didn't know what she was. I didn't know what any of this was, but I know now." I was shaking, but my voice held. "And I know what you are. You hunt the last of a people across the whole galaxy to make sure not one of them is left. You came all this way to murder a memory." I let out a breath. "Well, you found us, so come down here and take it, but you're going to have to come through me, and I want you to know my name when you do." Silence, long silence. And then the ship started to descend. This is the part where I should tell you about the great heroic battle, the clever trick that saved the day, the dramatic explosion. There wasn't one. There was just ember. When the ship started to come down, when it was clear that talking was over, that they were coming to take the collar and burn whatever wouldn't surrender it, Ember climbed out of the cradle. Slow. Calm. She walked to the very edge of the node, to the lip of the deep water, and she stood there, glowing bright in the dark, looking up at the ship. And then she looked back at me. And she did the last thing I expected. She came back. She pressed her huge head against the cockpit glass, right where my face was, the way she'd press against my knee in the quiet of the hangar. And she held it there. And her glow pulsed, slow and warm, and that voice that wasn't a voice came whispering up out of the collar one more time, and this time I understood it perfectly. "Thank you for hearing me, for not walking away. I can finish it from here. Go home, Keeper, go home and live. That is the gift you gave us, and now I give it back." And before I could move, before I could do anything, she pulled the collar off her own neck. I didn't know she could. None of us did. But she did, reached up with one webbed paw and worked it loose and let it fall, and the second it left her, the blue light went dark and the beacon died, and the scent the ship had hunted for so long simply vanished. She dropped the collar onto the cradle, onto Patience, where it would be safe, where I would carry it. And then she turned, and she dove into the deep black water, glowing like a falling star, straight down toward the hidden door she'd guarded her whole life. The ship's scanning light went wild. The beacon was gone. The collar was dark and dead in my cradle, broadcasting nothing. And the thing they'd hunted, the Keeper, the living signal, the bright glowing source of everything they'd tracked across the dark, was diving away from me, away from the platform, deep down into water no ship could follow, drawing every sensor on that warship straight down after her into the crushing dark. She was the bait now. She'd made herself the bait to save the door, to save the collar, to save me. I screamed her name. I'll be honest, I screamed it until my voice gave out. I tried to bring Patience around, tried to do something, but there was nothing to do. The water had already closed over her. The glow was already fading into the depths. The ship hung there a moment longer. Confused, I think. Hunting a signal that had gone silent and a creature that had gone where it couldn't follow. And then, and I will never know why, I've turned it over 10,000 times, it pulled up. It rose back into the clouds, slow and silent, and it climbed back into orbit, and a few hours later it left Echo's space entirely and didn't come back. Maybe they thought she'd taken the secret to the bottom with her. Maybe they thought the door was lost in the deep, unrecoverable, as good as destroyed. Maybe a dead silent signal looked to them like a job finished. Maybe she'd planned exactly that. I sat out there on that node in the dark for a long time. The collar lay in the cradle behind me, quiet and warm. The water was flat and black and gave nothing back. And eventually I turned Patience around and walked us home, slow, the long way, and I didn't look at the water once. That was 3 years ago. We never saw the ship again. We never saw Ember again either, though I went out to that node every single morning for a year at dawn and stood at the edge and looked down into the dark and waited. I don't know what I was waiting for. I think I just couldn't stand the idea of her down there in the cold, alone again, the way she'd been when I found her. But here's the thing I hold on to. The door's still there. Whatever's behind it, the last pieces of her people, the thing they hid and scattered and died to protect, it's still down there in the deep water under Echo, safe. The ship doesn't know. Nobody knows, just us. Just 40 nobodies on a platform without a real name. And we kept the collar. Akabe and Rent spent 2 years on it. Slowly, carefully, they read the map. All those marked points, all those scattered worlds, all those other keepers waiting in the dark. And we started quietly, carefully, with a beat-up salvage ship and more nerve than sense, we started going to find them. One at a time. Bringing the pieces home. It's slow, it's dangerous. There are dozens of worlds on that map and we've reached 4 of them so far. But we're doing it. Because she trusted me with the key, and you don't betray a trust like that. Not ever. I think about her every day. The way she looked at me from the water that first time, afraid to die alone. The way she pressed her head against the glass at the end. The way she chose, out of the whole universe, a tired man in a beat-up mule who just happened to hear her drowning. People ask me sometimes, the ones who have heard the story, the ones who half believe it, they ask me why she did it. Why she gave up her freedom, her life maybe, for a handful of strangers she'd known for 10 days. And I tell them the truth. She didn't do it for strangers. She did it because she knew what we were. She figured it out faster than we did. She figured out that the kind of people who hear something drowning and don't walk away, even when they should, even when it costs them everything, those are exactly the kind of people you can trust to carry the last hope of a dying world. She didn't pick us by accident. She picked us because we came. So that's my story, the whole thing told straight the way I promised. I pulled a drowning alien out of the cold water of a moon at the edge of nowhere. And I froze later when I learned what she'd been guarding, not because I was afraid, though I was, but because in that moment I understood that the smallest decent thing a person can do, hearing something drowning and choosing not to walk away, can turn out to be the thing a whole vanished people were waiting on, across the whole dark galaxy, without ever knowing our name. I think about that a lot, out on the water at dawn. We don't get to choose the moments that matter. They come dressed as ordinary mornings, calm and quiet, with no reason for anything to go wrong. The choice that changes everything looks at the time like nothing at all. So here's the only thing I'll ask of you, the only lesson I've got after 11-14, now, years out there in the dark. When you hear something drowning, don't walk away. You never know what it's carrying. You never know what you'll become for having stayed. I didn't.